Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here we are seeing Kapila Muni continuing his instructions to his mother Devahuti. Till the previous verse, maybe some 7 to 8 verses, we saw Kapila Muni explaining the condition of the soul in the womb of the mother. In that horrible condition, what does he pray? A fortunate living entity. What does he pray to the Supreme Lord? So just going through all those 7 to 8 verses, let us try to understand the summary of it. So in the beginning, the child in the womb of the mother, he says how because of forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord, he is being put into such a horrible condition because of the influence of the external energy of the Supreme Lord. He is being put into such repeated birth and death, such a condition. And then no other personality other than the Supreme Lord, who is situated in every living entity's heart as the Paramatma, is directing everything and everyone. So it is from the direction of the Supreme Lord, whatever miserable condition he is undergoing now, it's also a direction of the Supreme Lord, and by the same Supreme Lord's direction, he can be given release from this miserable condition also. And then he explains how his abominable condition in the womb of the mother, along with the urine, stool and all kinds of different kinds of worms biting him, putting him into whatever horrible condition in such a great confinement. So in this condition, he prays to the Lord. First, trying to fold his hands in gratitude. With folded hands, he expresses his gratitude to the Lord for having given back his consciousness. He will be partly conscious, fully unconscious, and conscious of few things in different ways, whatever. Now that, my dear Lord, by your mercy, I have become conscious of you. I have become conscious of my, whatever this horrible condition. Let me pray to you. So with folded hands, the living entity tries to pray to the Supreme Lord. And then he says how different living entities, by their different karmic reactions, are put into different kinds of wombs. There are varieties available. My dear Lord, there are many other living entities who are in such abominable condition that they'll not be able to recognize you at all. At least me, in this whatever human form of life what you are given, I am able to recognize you. I am able to pray to you. This is my good fortune. Because other living entities, other forms of life, they can't do this also. And then he says, if at all, if I am allowed to stay here, though it may be such a horrible condition, still let me stay here. Because I am afraid of a still more dangerous position. Now that this in the womb of the mother, dark and biting of the worms and different kinds of pains I am undergoing, still I am ready to continue with this suffering because I am afraid of yet another bigger suffering. What is that? If I come outside, I am afraid of your external energy, Maya. She'll put me into forgetfulness of you, and again I'll have to go circle around different varieties of species, different kinds of desires. I'm more afraid of that now that I have got little consciousness. If at all I am ready to continue to suffer here itself, but not come outside. And then he says, how? Now that by your remembrance I am able to offer prayers to you, tasmadaham vigata viklava uddharishya. By these prayers, by consciousness of you, by your remembrance, I'll be able to deliver myself from repeated birth and death. So telling this, the living entity in the womb of the mother, this is his consciousness at the point of birth. Shri Krishna Balarama ki. At the end of 9 months or whatever, 10th month, when it begins. So this is how the child is praying, and Kapila Muni says, the child is continuing to extol the Lord, that is glorify the Lord, offer his prayers to the Lord. At that point of time, he is not left in that condition. Evam kritamatir garbhe. We see in today's verse. Kritamatihi. So he has thus, whatever made up his mind. So this is his desire. Whatever he is praying to the Lord. At that point of time, garbhe, in the womb of the mother, dashamasyaha stuvan rishihi. He is 10 months old now. Stuvan, he is offering prayers, he is glorifying the Lord. Rishihi, so Rishihi, here it is referring to that living entity, because he is full with consciousness now, a fortunate living entity. Sadhyaha kshipati avachinam. Kshipati means to push, to make someone fall down, whatever, to push or pull. Sadhyaha kshipati avachitam. And how is he pushed? Head downwards, the body, leg upwards. He is pushed downwards. Prasutyai suti marutaha. Prasutyai means to take birth through the suti maruta. Maruta means the wind. The wind or the air which is responsible whatever for the child to take birth. So it increases in its whatever velocity or whatever, and it pushes the child downwards with his head downwards, and he is forced out of the womb of the mother. And then in the next verse, Tenavasrishtas sahasa krivavak shira aturaha vinishkramati krichrena niruchvaso hatasmriti. He becomes almost breathless, unable to breathe because of the extensive pain he has to undergo. His entire body has to pass through a small passage, and he is pushed out through that. And this pain is krichrena. Krichrena means like very great trouble, a highly painful condition. Already 10 months he has undergone whatever painful condition, and this is the whatever the final point. He is pushed out, and because of that extensive pain, he almost loses his memory. Hata smritihi. He is deprived of his memory. So, these are the conditions we need to understand. Pushed downward all of a sudden by the wind, the child comes out with great trouble, head downward, breathless, and deprived of memory due to severe agony. Somewhere I had heard earlier that how the human skull is made of two parts. There is a line in between. Especially like it is designed in a specific way, the child, while it is like supposed to take birth from the womb of the mother, it has to come out through a very narrow passage. Sometimes the skull, the two parts will overlap each other, and then it comes out and then again sets itself right. And then of course when the child grows, whatever the skull, the skeleton, whatever the proper form it takes. See, that's what like trying to say how it's not an easy thing to take birth. It is just pushed outside. The child, it is praying to the Lord, having come to consciousness, and now it is like made to undergo. It is whatever, to come out of this small passage, terrible pain in which loss of memory happens, and this is the condition. He is almost breathless. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions, a person who is serious about advancement in spiritual consciousness should always consider the four pangs of birth, death, disease and old age. So we have to consider these things which goes on during these four conditions of life which every person has to undergo. It's not that somehow now I am very happy condition, I am staying comfortably with my family, with lot of money, comfortably situated. No, we have to consider these things. A day will come, I have to die. Again a day will come, again I have to take birth, undergoing all the things what we have studied till now, the description given by Lord Kapila. So this consideration has to be made. Otherwise it's just like foolish, or maybe like childish behavior, not knowing the future. Simply now, whatever, like two things we say, Shreya and Preya. Preya meaning temporary happiness. As of now, there are things available for my sense gratification, let me go ahead with it. Why to think about tomorrow? But Shreya means, even though I may be put into some miserable condition today, even though it may require some austere conditions I have to take up voluntarily, let it be for my ultimate good. So this is Shreya. So intelligent people, they always consider what is Shreya. Shreya Uttamam. What's the ultimate benefit that we have to consider? So if at all we don't consider the painful conditions here in the material existence, it will not propel us. It will not, like all of these painful conditions should act as a stimuli for us to take up the spiritual life very seriously. So these are the considerations to be made. So in the same verse, like in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, wherein Krishna speaks about Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha, Doshanu, Darshanam. So it's an item of knowledge. A person who is intelligent, who is a person who is said to be a person of knowledge, means he should be aware of the miseries which a living entity undergoes during these four occasions: at the point of birth, at the point of death, during his old age, and in his diseased conditions. These are real miseries of life. There in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, one should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age and disease. There are descriptions in various Vedic literatures of birth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of the unborn, the child's stay in the womb of the mother, its suffering, etc. are all very graphically described. That's the exact portion what we are studying now. Kapila Muni's explanation of the world of the child in the womb of the mother, graphically explained, very descriptively. It should be thoroughly understood that birth is distressful. So this is the conclusion of all of these things. Taking birth in this material world is distressful. This should be thoroughly understood. Because we forget how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother, we do not make any solution to the repetition of birth and death. Why do we don't make solution for this? Because we have forgotten it. Just because we have forgotten, is it that we have not undergone that pain? No, we have undergone. Just because we are forgetful and somehow we are leading our life, is it that in future we will not be put into same terrible situation again? No, again we will be put into. We should be aware of this, we should be afraid of this. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of sufferings, and they are also mentioned in the authoritative scriptures. These should be discussed. So devotees should discuss the pains which a living entity undergoes during these terrible conditions. We can't be forgetful of these. We can't just push these things aside. We have to contemplate on these. We should be aware of these. And as far as disease and old age are concerned, everyone gets practical experience. No one wants to be diseased and no one wants to become old. But there is no avoiding these. Unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life. See, this is what Prabhupada says. Unless we have a pessimistic view. There is something known as being optimistic. Of course, devotee has to be optimistic. Where? In his spiritual life. Whatever a terrible condition may be, whatever unwanted situations he may be put into, whatever pains he may be undergoing, still he should be optimistic. Everything is temporary. It is dukkhalayam, it is ashashvatam. How happiness is temporary, similarly the painful situation is also temporary. A devotee should be optimistic. Whatever condition he may be put into, all his family members, relatives, his money, everything he may be stripped off. Everyone would have abandoned him. Still, there is one person, the Supreme Lord, who is his dear friend, dearmost friend, Suhridam Sarvabhutana. He doesn't leave a living entity's hand. He is always there to help him, support him. So these thoughts should make him optimistic. And the Supreme Lord, more than the living entity, he is more eager to take back the conditioned soul towards him, to his eternal life in the spiritual world. This should make him optimistic. And the Supreme Lord, he personally comes, incarnates in this material world to inspire living entities to go along with him. He leaves his instructions in the form of the Bhagavad Gita and the other Vedic literatures to help a living entity to follow certain whatever prescribed rules and regulations which will help him to go back to Godhead. Time and again, he sends his personal associates, confidential associates, his messengers, pure devotees. They come and try to inspire living entities and try to take them back. All of these arrangements the Lord has made. So thinking about all of these things, a devotee should be optimistic. But simultaneously, here Prabhupada says, unless we have a pessimistic view of the material life. In material life, a devotee is pessimistic. How much ever money I may be having, whatever good physique, well-built body, healthy condition I may be in, good family members, good friend circle, nice country, state, good administration, whatever conditions it may be, a devotee is pessimistic. None of these things will endure. Today these people are there with me. Tomorrow what will happen, where they'll go, where I will go, we don't know. Today I may be having big bank balance. Tomorrow what will happen to that, we don't know. Today some stability we find in the state, in the country, whatever. Tomorrow who will come, how enemies attack may be there and how things may go haywire. We should have pessimistic view. Whatever conditions are there, accept it. Focus should be on practice of our spiritual life. Conditions are favorable, well and good. Conditions are not favorable, still what can be done? Well and good, I'll continue with my spiritual activities. To whatever extent he can, a devotee tries to improve conditions so that spiritual knowledge can be spread. Knowledge about the Supreme Lord can be given to others. For this purpose, whatever extent possible from his side, he will put his effort in this material world to make whatever people happy in real sense, in the service of the Supreme Lord. A living entity can be really happy only when he comes in touch with the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, any other happiness, so-called happiness of this material world, is not true happiness at all. So for that purpose, a devotee, whatever extent possible, in the material world also, he tries to make some arrangement. It may be successful, it may not be successful also. Irrespective of this, in his individual capacity, whatever in his individual life, he should be fully fixed. He has a pessimistic view towards material life. Whatever I may do, one or the other day, it is sure this body is sure to give whatever pain to me, trouble, sufferings to me. So this bodily existence should be whatever stopped. Our focus should be on going back to Godhead. If at all the Lord wishes that we are here, let us continue with our devotional service under the protection of the Lord, under the maintenance of the Supreme Lord. So this is a devotee's viewpoint. So that's what Prabhupada says here. Unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the distresses of birth, death, old age and disease, there is no impetus for our making advancement in spiritual life. See, we require some impetus. We require some inspiration to take up spiritual life seriously. See, otherwise, getting up early in the morning or fasting, today is Ekadashi, naturally we may not be inclined towards these things. Somehow, okay, I'm chanting, I'm reading, doing some service, somehow let us go ahead. No, devotional life has to be practiced very seriously. Tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Tivrena, there should be some seriousness. With great intensity, we have to perform devotional activities. And the understanding, the discussion, hearing of the miseries of birth, death and old age and disease will act as an impetus for devotees to become serious in their spiritual life. This is what Srila Prabhupada says in this purport. So, coming back here, Kapila Muni, after finishing explanation of the way the living entity, what is his consciousness inside the womb of the mother, and after coming out, how he forgets all those things. So similarly, in devotees' case also, when we read such descriptions, when we are in the association of devotees, then we have certain type of consciousness. But what to do? Material life is very severe. Maya is very powerful. At any given point of time, we may be put into forgetfulness of all of these understandings, of all of these conclusions. So continuously we have to pray to the Supreme Lord. Okay, now one more point to understand here. The child actually is praying to the Lord. It's not that, okay, we offer prayers to the Supreme Lord and our miserable condition will be set off, or will be completely relieved from that immediately. Sometimes it may be by the personal grace of the Lord, and it may not be also. Here we see the child is praying to the Lord. Kapila Muni telling, Evam Kritamatir Garbhe Dashamasya Stuvan Rishihi. He is offering prayers to the Lord. And still he has to undergo the pain of the birth. He is pushed outside of the small passage to lose his memory and distressful condition. Likewise, now we are born, we are practicing devotional life, we pray to the Supreme Lord. Is it that maybe next we will not be able to made to undergo old age, disease, death? No, even in a devotee's life also, he may be put into all these conditions. But every condition he is put into, a devotee should take that condition as an impetus to depend on the Supreme Lord more, to understand, to become pessimistic of material existence. So this is what is required. So even after becoming devotees, offering prayers to the Supreme Lord, still old age, disease, death, these conditions the material body has to undergo. But somehow or the other, we try to maintain our consciousness to fix it on the Supreme Lord. And if at all we are put into such a horrible condition that we are completely, our memory is lost. We can't remember anything, including the Supreme Lord. And what can be done? The only asset what we can accrue is, to whatever extent possible in our life, we render devotional service and leave the rest to the Supreme Lord. In such horrible conditions, when there will be no memory at all, there will be complete memory loss, at that point of time, it is only the Supreme Lord who can lift us up. Otherwise, there is no hope. So understanding all these things, a living entity is completely dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Lord. More descriptions till now we heard, till he took his birth in the womb of the mother, what is the horrible condition? From next verse onwards we'll be seeing how is it that, okay, now that horrible condition is gone, he came out of the womb of the mother and he is happy? No. Still that horrible, miserable condition continues. And what all like sufferings he has to undergo, we'll be seeing from the next verses. We'll end with this. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.